We were misinformed. Mark said we were going to do a comedy routine. I have one story at least. The bus ride over reminds me of bus rides that I've taken over the years with various conferences of other subjects, torts, for example, or doctrinal teachers. And the usual conversation there goes something like, my this, and me this, and I this, and it goes on for, I've written this, and the next line is something like, well, I've talked about myself long enough, what do you think about my this? The bus ride here was typical of this great profession. At every bus ride I've ever taken at a legal writing event, from the beginning ones back in Puget Sound, both going to the conference, coming from it, going to the airplane, what was the conversation? I was listening this morning. 75% of what I heard was, do you have a problem I could use on, and how do you manage to teach this, and what size how can I get a dean to reduce this? All they talk about is legal writing, morning, noon, and night. And that's so great. And that makes this profession truly unique and wonderful. What's your story?
Well, I feel safe telling this story because I watched the security coming into the building very carefully. They did a very good job with Ralph. I feel safe up here. But there are times when I don't feel safe with Ralph. You cannot call him the grand old man of legal writing. You can call him the grand man. The reason that you can't call him the grand old man is because he drives hot sports cars. That's when I do not feel safe with Ralph. No, I mean really hot sports cars. And I won't tell about the speeds you're achieving for illegal. Well, okay, illegal. But I will tell a story. It's both a story on Ralph and a story on me. Ralph has been teaching legal writing since the Kennedy administration, which precedes me because I was born during the Nixon administration. And I went, you don't believe this, do you? I went to my first legal writing conference during the Carter administration, and I was afraid to come up to Ralph and start a conversation because he was the type man in the field. He still is. But one of the founders of this field. And I eventually did get enough courage to do it. This was during the Carter administration. So I came up to him and started a conversation. He looked at me and very gently said, and asked, when did you start teaching legal writing? You look very young. And I said, during the Ford administration. And he breathed a sigh of relief and said, as long as it wasn't during the Eisenhower administration. He really was one of the very he really was one of the first people to teach legal writing and had a great deal to do with the founding of the field. So, you have a presentation.
Oh, much more important things. I have a really unique privilege, and I hope that this sometime comes to many of you. How often do you get a chance to present an award to someone who was your student, who was a teaching assistant in the legal writing program that I administered, who was an adjunct in the program that I administered, who I've mentored in her career since, where she has become a complete superstar, and that's Susan Brody. After she graduated law school, she of course went to work for a law firm, but in 1982 she was offered a 2-year non-renewable contract to teach at John Marshall Law School, to teach legal writing, which she for some reason took against my advice. But she dedicated herself during that 2 years to two things: to improving their program, which admittedly by the people at John Marshall will tell you was much like those at most U.S. law schools, pretty awful at that time. There was only minimum course requirements, very high student-faculty ratio, low pay, no status. And her contract was non-renewable. And the other thing she committed herself was to moot court, which, again, at John Marshall had been a volunteer program. Students would volunteer to be in a national competition or something, but there was no internal mechanism for choosing them. So let me just talk about the moot court first. They had never really been very successful in this. When you're depending on volunteer students, you usually get volunteer work from them, which is other priorities. But she was dedicated to really changing that. And the competition I remember vividly was the Chicago Bar Association's second annual. And as luck would have it, she got into the final round, her team got into the final round, against my team, the team that I was coaching. what a conflict there. I was hoping she would win, and yet, of course, I was beholden to my own students. And frankly, her team did win, except for the fact that one of the judges didn't really understand moot court procedures, and so they awarded the win to our team, and she was kind of devastated by that. But it did encourage her to try again, and now John Marshall's moot court program is excellent, let's face it, it's one of the stars. And the same with the program. She started working even though she had no guarantee she would be back again in improving the existing program at John Marshall, which led them in 1984 to offer her the directorship, and a year later to put her on the tenure track. And so one of the first things she did was to work on getting tenure track status for the other legal writing teachers. She wasn't going to be a director with tenure when she was directing people who did not have it. And so, slowly but surely, obviously these things don't work overnight, she did attain tenure track status for the first three, and over time it now becomes a full tenure track program, one of the only ones in the country. And that's because of what she did at the start. On a national level, of course, she then became wildly engaged in all the activities of this group. She was a founding board member, founder and board member of the Legal Writing Institute, a founding board member of AALS. She was the chair of this section. She was the chair of the ABA section on communication skills. She was a co-author with Richard and Chris Coons, excuse me, I had you two married, Marilyn Walter and me, on the first legal writing source book. That took us 2 years of work in great places like William Mitchell's library and my office and some hotel down at Disney World. But that, I think, was a pretty good start for the legal writing source book. And then she became active in some of the political activities. And so in 1995, I think it was, when we first started lobbying for some standard that would guarantee some standards that would attract and retain legal writing personnel and count them as at least 7/10 of a person for the student-faculty ratio. It was Susan who gave a brilliant speech to the House of Delegates with no opposition from the deans who had opposed it during the process, and got that first step enacted with the help of Richard and others. And since then, she has continued her work in the ABA. She has been on, I think it's something like 15 site inspection teams, appointed to special commissions. You name the school, she's probably been there as either a member of or chair of a site team. This is the last line of the nominating letter, last paragraph, excuse me. Susan is a wonderful colleague and mentor. She unselfishly shares her expertise. She continues to work behind the scenes to advance the legal writing program. She gives the benefit of her wisdom both within John Marshall and throughout the legal writing establishment. She is a politician in the best sense of the word. I give you Susan Burke.
Usually, and Ralph just highlighted a lot of what I was going to tell you about. But I think the most important thing I want to say is thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Ralph, Mark, the nominating committee, and all of you out there. When the word lifetime is included in the title of any kind of recognition, it gives one serious pause. First to think, am I really that old? And second, to really review one's lifetime, professional lifetime. But I think the most important thing I want to say to everyone here is that it's not about me, it's not about my lifetime, it's not about my contributions. It's about the collective we. It's about all of our lifetimes, all of our contributions. It's about passing the torch of the trials and tribulations and the work and the perseverance and the dealing with people calling you the little legal writing lady and asking you in front of the entire McCrate conference, who next? The janitors will be seeking tenure. It's dealing with fight after fight after fight, and it's not me. I'm just a teeny, itsy bitsy part of this wonderful history and evolution. I wanted to accept this wonderful award on behalf of all of us because I am just a small little part of something that you all have shared in and that deserves recognition. I want to highlight just a couple little things that Ralph has already mentioned. When in 1980, Ralph called me and asked me to teach part-time at Kent, and I was a litigator, miserably litigating, I might tell you. And I started doing that, and I not only was just so happy to be working with Ralph, who had been my professor, my inspiration, my mentor, but I've had a moment when I was teaching and I thought, why is this so unrecognized? Why is this so unimportant in the academy? And that was in 1980. When I was doing it part-time, and when I got the opportunity to teach full-time at John Marshall, 2 years goodbye, supposedly, I grabbed at it. I didn't know what I was going to do. I actually saw it kind of as a ticket out of litigation. I thought, I'll go get my LLM degree, which you could get tuition-free when you were teaching at John Marshall. And I thought, well, I'll get an LLM, I'll go back into practice. But that same thought constantly permeated my head. Why is this so unrecognized? What is going on? And then two pivotal events occurred in the 1980s. And the first one was the dean at John Marshall came to me and says, you know, I want you to help me with this vision. I want you to help me create a program that would span all 3 years at John Marshall, and it would be 10 or 12 hours worth of credit. And I want you to help me sell it to the faculty. I want you to create it. I want you to help me hire the people. And we did it. And a couple of years later, we had everyone on the tenure track. I mean, it was just one thing after another. It sounds like it happened so fast, but it really happened over a period of 10, 12 years. And it has been the most incredible ride for me, mostly because I have shared this lifetime and shared all this hard work with all of you. As I look around the room, I realize there's so many of us now. In 1984, the other pivotal event that occurred, there was the very first legal writing conference in the summer at the University of Puget Sound. There were less than 100 of us there. And I remember being so exhilarated and learning so much. And I remember this moment. I've repeated this story before. There was a moment at the end of the conference. A few of us were standing in this tiered classroom in the back, and we said, so, you think we should do this again? And you think we ought to create something formally? Oh, okay, that's fine. And that was the beginning of the birth, the beginning of the Legal Writing Institute. You all know the history. The last meeting of the Legal Writing Institute, more than 700 people, 2,100 people on the listserv, and on and on and on and on. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful time. The best part of this is sharing this with you. The most wonderful, committed, passionate, talented people. And it's been the most wonderful professional life anyone could ask for. And I accept this really humbly and share it with all of you. Thanks.
The other co-honoree today is Mary Varner Ray, and you all know her for her two books, Beyond the Basics and Getting It Right and Getting It Written. And I'd like to ask her two co-authors to come up and help me present to her, Barbara Cox and Jill Ramsfield. These two books are on all of our bookshelves. We consult them often. I learned a great deal from each of them, and they alone would be a tremendous contribution to the field. But Mary has done many other things as well. She has mentored many people, and she mentioned to me earlier today that 5 of her former students are in the field, legal writing teachers. Many of us would be very proud of ourselves if we came anywhere near that number. And she's mentored many people in the field generally because she's such a kind and warm person that everybody seeks her as a mentor. She also has a great flair for choosing titles. She's written column articles with titles such as Preventing Colon Problems and Close Adventures of the Word Kind. And there's a videotape or a recording, a video recording that has circulated for many, many years, from which a large number of people in the field have learned how to deal with students who are feeling in a difficult situation and are making that clear to a teacher. The videotape, or the recording, dates from 1992, and if you remember what motion pictures were popular in that year, you'll understand the joke in the title. The title is Text, Size, and Videotape. Mary's a very witty person and has proved that many times. So, Mary Ray, we'd like to present this award to you.
Receiving this award is the sweetest part of the bittersweet feelings that I have about retiring. It really means more to me than I can say. You know, words have their limits, and I'm hitting them on this. I have so many people I want to thank, but lunch is waiting, so I'm going to forgo names and just share the substance of what I'm thankful for about this profession, and you'll know who you are anyway. I want to thank you, energetic friend, for taking the time and trouble to nominate me and to write letters of support. That's a critical piece with awards. It's really your friends and who cares enough to put forward that effort. I will always appreciate that generosity. I will always remember that. Thank you to our new dean, who, I don't know if she could make it today, because logistics were hard, who, even though I'm retired, gave me some funding to come to this, which was incredibly generous. I really thank her for that. Thank you, longstanding colleague with whom I've shared meals and conversations, I think, at every legal writing institute or Allwood meeting. Our friendship's something I don't want to lose, so please stay in touch. My email still works after I retire. I thank you to the colleague who makes me look forward to long road trips because it's so much fun to travel with you, to go to the conferences. Thank you to the colleague who stops to talk to me, even though you're always the popular one at the conference. I always feel so honored when you do that. Thank you, people who came up to me sometimes before I got to know you and said, oh, you found something in a book that I wrote that we co-authored really useful, or something in a presentation. Those little pats on the back keep me going for months, pretty much the year until the next conference comes out. So you have no idea how much that means to someone to feel useful. Thank you also to colleagues who skip sessions to talk about such interesting things, some interesting travel trips, river travel, personal challenges, background, backstories on how you got to the point where you are. To the friend with whom I always learn about the latest technology and research techniques. All those conversations really enriched me as much as the many great presentations that I saw. As you were mentioning earlier, thank you for sharing your cabs, sharing your snacks at the meetings when I'm running low, even sharing a hotel room when I got to a conference and found out my room had accidentally been canceled. This is an incredibly generous organization, and it really, because I also do some work trying to connect with the writing field more broadly, I particularly appreciate that, and I hope all of you do. It really is a very special field. A few other things. To the new legal writing specialists who asked me for materials to start up your program, thank you. Also to colleagues who asked for help when you were stuck on writing an article, or if you wanted me to review something, or just needed to talk, when you get something, or called and asked about candidates. You all have no idea how that really benefited me. The connection, the sharing, just feeling useful is so important, and you just fired me up to do more. Particularly new people coming on and asking for materials. People talk about, oh, how nice of you to share. It's like, it does me as much good. There's nothing more exciting than seeing people when they're students and then they move on and they don't need you anymore and they go out there and work in the field. It's really exciting, and you've probably given me more of an emotional boost than I could ever give you. So thank you. Thank you to my co-authors who, even knowing what it was like to write with me before, would go back and write another time. I even want to thank the former dean who told me that I should not get a law degree or a PhD in teaching writing because it would never pay as long as I was determined to stay in legal writing. You were wrong, but you freed me to just research what I wanted to instead of going into the constraints of a degree program, which has allowed me to get this enormous, odd miscellany of information that's been really useful. Although I'm retiring from grading papers and the routine work, I really am not quite ready to retire from the intellectual pursuit of teaching writing, which has absolutely possessed my brain since about 1960. Never mind. Long time. And I'm still not done. If I had 40 more years to work, I wouldn't be done. And so I want to pass on some of those ideas to you, and I hope that you pick up the torch and take it forward. There is so much out there to learn about teaching writing. There is so much that is right. It's just fruit ready to be plucked. And frankly, the teaching writing field, the larger field, is not necessarily grabbing that. So you can. I think legal writing can become a field that is on the cutting edge of teaching writing. We can kind of jump over the other fields and move into that and start informing other people who are teaching writing in undergraduate school. I say that because we have the clout, because what you teach is important, and I think you will have people who will want to fund the research, even in this tight times. So I think there's tremendous, tremendous potential. I really wish in a way I were starting over again, because the potential is greater now than it was. Here are a few examples. Legal writing, because we have this combination of writers and readers that really matter to the world, that makes such a difference. That's kind of where you get your clout, and I think you get research funding probably from a lot of different sources. But some examples. The research in reading now is extraordinary. They don't have to ask people how. They just put on the devices and they know exactly what you look at, exactly how long you look at, how long you take before you go to another part, when you jump back, and what you focus on down to the few letters of the word that people read. The tools they have are tremendous. If we apply these tools to judges, to senior attorneys, you can know exactly how they read. You don't have to depend on the protocols of getting reports. There's tremendous research potential there. And think how it would inform us about teaching and writing. And the connection between this tremendous research in reading and what it informs us about as writing teachers, really I haven't seen made. So somebody out there, jump on that one. How writers organize, the things they're doing with how organization works in the brain, and kind of figuring out this new fourth category and taking what they use from computers and imaging of the brain is pretty extraordinary. They can't read people's minds yet, but there's a lot they can learn. This is going to be very important. We need to get beyond, and I'm talking not just legal writing, but writing generally, beyond teaching people to organize by saying, well, you need to outline first, or you know it's a recursive process. Those are both useful, but not very useful, really. There is so much more, and the technology is there, almost. There's a lot there to be used. So teaming up with researchers in those areas and in areas of neuroscience, there's tremendous stuff we can do. Behavioral research has done a lot, and I think that's going to be very important, looking at how people make decisions and how they come to believe and value things, how they develop values. That information's really been around a long time, but it hasn't been fully pulled into ethical decisions. We can learn how to teach our students to want to be ethical. We can do better at that. And that's not really legal writing, but a lot of us are getting into that area. There's tremendous potential there for research and for writing and theorizing, coming up with new ideas. There has been so much leadership, as we've just heard about, in this profession, in developing the status and the visibility of teaching legal writing. That's been so important. We've done so much. Now, I think, is the right time for us to move into teaching writing in terms of the knowledge in the field and doing the research. Not that we want to abandon or take for granted the other concerns about status, but work on the knowledge. And I hope to see this field really push development of the science and the craft and the art that is teaching writing. It's time now, probably, for me to rest on the laurels that you've given me today. I've probably done enough. But it is not time for you to rest on your laurels.